thought of when Pope Francis had named you as a cardinal?
I suppose Pope Francis. I just thought, well, what are you thinking? You know, and I just believe that his, you know, the Holy Father, whoever he is, his mission is important. I believe that Pope Francis is a grace for this time. And I thought, you really have to choose your collaborators carefully, because you can't have everybody. So I was really humbled and I'd say a little bit embarrassed by the Pope's confidence in me.
Why embarrassed?
Well, I just, you know, have an awareness of how vast the Catholic Church is in this country, and what great leaders they have. And I just, you know, one of the people I identify with most in Scripture is Peter. And, you know, his call on Luke is one that I think about when he falls on his knees after seeing the miracle of Jesus and saying, go away from me, I'm a sinful man. And in my mind's eye, Jesus smiles as he replies, come follow me. It's like, I know that, but come follow me. And so,
you mentioned the great leaders in the church, and take a look at the 17 new cardinals that Pope Francis has named. Do you see a thread that connects all of you? Some analysts have suggested that this group reflects an emphasis on the church building bridges and being a little more welcoming. What do you see as a common thread among the 17 new cardinals?
well, I think that there isn't like an eternal job description for a cardinal, almost like there isn't really one for the Holy Father. And the Church prays as it elects a pope that it will be the one that it needs now. And I think, I'm quite convinced that Pope Francis is the pope that we need now. I served closely with Benedict XVI and with St. John Paul II, and they all responded to needs that were real in the church and world at that time. I was ordained a priest in the last months of Paul VI's life, and I have such wonderful respect for him and a love for Blessed John the 23rd, not just because of his figure. But I think in the same way, cardinals are chosen for the needs the church faces now. And so that's why his first choice was an Italian who is the ambassador to Syria, which is, as he called, the decree says, our beloved and martyred country of Syria. So that's really on the Pope's mind. I think the second one is from a tiny country, the Central African Republic, which is one of the most violent areas of the world, and one that he visited earlier this year at great risk for his own safety. And so I think that he wants those voices present within the deliberations of the College of Cardinals, because they're important voices in the world today.
In your press conference, you talked about the last 4 years, the Archdiocese being your teacher, that it's helped form you. When you look at those 4 years of your life in Indianapolis, leading up to the announcement by Pope Francis, what goes through your mind in terms of your 4 years here?
Well, I think the first that goes through my mind is gratitude. I'm grateful that Pope Benedict XVI sent me here. I think that I often believe that the Apostle Paul makes reference in his letters to the faith of the people he's writing to. And I think that's not just a courtesy or a literary form, but it's because their faith serves to strengthen his faith. And that's certainly been my experience here, is meeting faith-filled people of the Archdiocese, whose faith and works challenge me and support me. So the gratitude for that, I think, is one. Secondly, the challenges of, I think one challenge that I've articulated a lot recently is the challenge of a far-flung archdiocese, 131 parishes in 39 counties, moving from resembling more of an archipelago to a network of solidarity and support. That has demanded some painful decisions, and I know that, and I know people still suffer because of some of the results of Connected in the Spirit. But I also think it's a hope-filled process, because its object wasn't to close parishes, but to ensure greater vitality. Though certainly those 4 years were tinged with the responsibility of making some difficult decisions, and I hope and pray that they ultimately contribute to the greater growth in the church.
At the same time, you've developed what I think universally across the parish, even though it's far-flung, a real deep connection with the people of the Archdiocese. How would you describe that connection that you feel between yourself and the people of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis?
I was thinking of this last night. In 2007, I was in Argentina for a period, and including the great city of Buenos Aires. And at the time, the Archbishop's name was Jorge Bergoglio, who was a cardinal. And I think it was pretty common knowledge that in the conclave of 2005 that elected Benedict XVI, he was close and probably in second place. So in an interview that I read during my visit, a journalist asked him, "Are you sorry that you weren't elected the Pope?" And they said his immediate response was, "Absolutely not. I would die without my people." And I suppose what 4 years has done for me is this wonderful Catholic community spread across 39 counties has gone from the Archdiocese to my people. And I don't mean that in a proprietary way at all, but it's my people. They have a claim on me, and I have a claim on them. And I said during the interview, and I always want to reiterate this, I'm able to get around the Archdiocese because Archbishop Daniel left it on such a firm foundation. So why I pay attention to things? I don't think I have the worries he had in administration and in finances, because the people have responded with generosity, and he not only left good structures, but he attracted very talented people to work. So that allows me then to spend a lot of time in the four corners of the Archdiocese.
Now, you mentioned him finishing second in the 2005 synod that you shared with Pope Francis. I think you passed along to him that your mom said that he should have won. What do you think your mom's thinking of him now that he has named you a cardinal?
Well, it was funny because yesterday, my mom can get a little emotional at times, and she said, "I can't believe that a child of mine is a prince of the church." I said, "No, Mother, you don't believe I'm a prince of the church. I don't believe I'm a prince of the church. And Pope Francis certainly doesn't believe I'm a prince of the church, so we'll never use that word again." Because I had told him back in 2005, kind of explaining why he was my mother's candidate, I gestured with my hand up on my hairline saying, "And she's had it up to here with princes of the church." So she says, you're right. I was a little taken away. So I think she's pleased. I mean, she loves Pope Francis. She's a little bit taken aback at the attention he pays to her. I said to her, I think he appointed me to this because he wants to get to you. Because he's always, like a good pastor, he remembers things. And whenever I've seen him, and even at times when he's written to me, I've not seen him, he always says, "How's your mother? And does she still pray for me?" And I've assured him she's a good Catholic and prays for the Holy Father. But, yeah, so you remember that.
Well, initially you didn't want your siblings to wake her up. At what point in the day did you get an opportunity to talk with her?
Well, she called, I guess it's all kind of a blur yesterday, but I think it was when I was heading over to Tell City, so late in the morning yesterday, and she was a little dazed. And so was I, so it was 2 days, people kind of stuttering at each other.
Okay. Now, you've had the opportunity to know Pope Francis at least since 2005. Mm-hmm. How would you describe the relationship? I always thought at the Pallium Mass that he spent considerable time with you, talking with you. How would you describe your relationship with him?
Well, I really think in all sincerity that I'm an unworthy recipient of his affection. I don't know why. It was that whatever began in 2005 has continued and deepened, I suppose. And I was struck when I received the pallium from him. First we had a conversation, and it was clear that he knew the circumstances of my life in the last years. And when he put the pallium on my shoulders, he switched from Italian into Spanish. I think because that was the language of his heart. And he said something very personal to me, and it was lovely. And I've always been grateful for that, but I never thought it would end with the news that I got yesterday morning.
At the risk of embarrassing you again, people have made the connection, see similarities between you and Pope Francis in terms of building bridges, being welcoming to refugees, migrants. Talk about that connection between the two of you.
Well, I think it's the connection of a teacher and a disciple. I mean, when I've seen him over the last, probably seen him a handful of times in the last 4 years, I always thank him for teaching me how to be a bishop. Because knowing not only how he administered in the Archdiocese of Buenos Aires, but also his what he teaches, and when he articulates his expectation for bishops and priests. He's teaching me how to do this. I've never done this before, and I'm a priest 38 years. I'm a bishop 6, so I might know a little bit about being a priest. I'm still learning a lot each day about being a bishop.
Now, you mentioned something in the press conference about staying focused on being a priest. I think someone you admire, Father Hesburgh, said in all his years, the one thing he was most proud of was being a priest. Talk about that in your own life.
Not only being a priest for Hesburgh, and I think it's good that I preface where he said that to me, because he said it many times. But one of the last times I had an extended period with him was shortly after I was installed here. I went up to South Bend and at the university and had lunch with him. And at one point I said, "Do you still hold the record in the Guinness Book of Records?" And the record I believe he still holds is the number of honorary doctorates. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's 151. And he looked at me and smiled and said, "Yeah, 151. He said, "But you know what I'm the most proud of?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "I've been a priest 70 years. I've missed celebrating Mass once in 70 years. And And the day, in case, anybody's ever wondering what kept him from Mass, he was visiting his brother and sister-in-law, and the brother had to go away on business, and the sister-in-law went into labor. So Father Ted took her to the hospital and stayed with her while she was in labor the whole day, and until his brother could get home. And that's the only day in 70 years he didn't celebrate the Eucharist. So he had his priorities right.
On September 7th at the Administrator's Mass, you began your homily by asking people what was the greatest moment of your summer, and then you made your own connection to having your one-on-one meeting with Pope Francis. I think you've already established your greatest moment of this fall. In terms of your life, is this the most memorable moment of your life?
That's a difficult question to answer. I would tend to say no,
Okay.
only because I'm at the distance of 24 hours. But
Right.
I think becoming a cardinal, as much as I understand it, it's an additional invitation to serve. I don't see it much different from much beyond that. I think there have been other moments in my life as a priest, as a redemptorist, as a man, as a human being that, if you were going to try and equate it, would supersede what I heard now. Perhaps this is a doorway to other things, but, other great moments of service. But, I remember I was Superior General of the Redemptorists for 12 years, 2 terms. And we have term limits, which is a good idea. You toss the bum out. But my final sort of circular letter to the congregation, I talked about the reflection I had on why God called me to do this work. And I said, in the first years when people would say to me, how on earth did you ever get elected Superior General? Which was a legitimate question. I would always refer to St. Alphonsus, who didn't have much. He was kind of an autocrat, He didn't have much faith in legislative bodies like chapters, And he would always use 3 C's in Italian. Capitolo, cavallo, cieco, which means the chapter's a blind horse. It goes wherever it wants. I think he was always a little resentful that he wasn't elected on the first ballot, on the congregation he founded. And I used to say that, the chapter's a blind horse, and it kind of picked me. At the end, I had a different view, and I said, I think I was elected because God believed I didn't love the congregation enough. So he gave me 12 years to learn to love it more. And perhaps yesterday's news was an indication that God thinks that I don't love the church enough. So he's given me an even more profound way to love it more.
You mentioned the 24 hours. It's been a whirlwind. You were at St. Meinrad, then you did confirmation. You had a number of phone calls, tweets, whatever. This morning you're getting hugged by weightlifters at the gym. In the quiet moments when you maybe put away the phone or stepped away from the iPad, what was going through your mind? Did you pray? Did you ask for the intercession of any saints in this time? What did you do in those quiet moments when it was just you?
I found it particularly hard to pray in this sort of, and it leads me to, once again, an incident from the life of Peter that has always made sense to me, sort of experientially. And that's when, Peter's with the disciples in the boat, and it's being tossed around, and suddenly they see Jesus walking on the water, and they think it's a ghost. And Peter, for reasons that have never been clear to me, blurts out, "If it's you, have me walk on the water." Why didn't he say, if it's you, calm the storm? You know? But Peter said no. Maybe it was that visceral desire to follow him. And he said, and Jesus says, come. And he gets out of the boat, which again puzzles me. And he begins to walk on the water, and when he's more conscious of the waves and the wind, he begins to sink. As long as he maintains his eyes focused on Jesus. So what I've been tried to do in the last 24 hours is say, you know, once more I think you invite me to get out of the boat. You know, help me see you. And even when you begin to sink, when I begin to sink, it's not too late. You cry out. So I think in the quiet moments I've been looking for him.
Have you heard, I'm not sure about the process. Have you heard from Pope Francis yet, or is that a phone call that?
I don't
How does that handle?
I don't expect to get one, but
okay.
you know, you just never know with this Holy Father.
Okay.
I'll see him next month when I go to
Okay.
and you know, I understand that there might be some meetings leading up to the consistory, so I'll just have to stay tuned on that.
We talked earlier about the importance of being a priest in your life. Did you, in the last 24 hours or 30, whatever, in that time period since then, to think back of when you first became a priest?
I thought of different moments early on, you know, in my first assignment, which was a parish in Detroit, and a very busy and poor parish, and the people that I met and what they taught me. And yeah, I think I think of being with dying people and invited into the homes of families that were having problems. Yeah, all of that has crossed my mind.
Okay. 2:30 in the morning, you said you got up this morning. What made, I can imagine what made you sleepless, but what got you up at that hour?
Well, I suppose the most immediate concern was I had not silenced my cell phone and iPad, and normally that's no problem, and I keep it on in case somebody needs to get a hold of me during the night, which rarely happens. But it was really bleeping and beeping, and then I just couldn't get back to sleep. I was thinking of what this means. And I really wanted to sleep, because knowing that at 5:30 I was going to be lifting, and I lift some rather heavy things, and it's not a good idea to do that if you're a little sleepy.
Do you think at some point you'll be able to see the joy in this moment that a lot of other people obviously are feeling for you? Someone's even suggested that from an archdiocesan standpoint, it's a source of pride or an uplifting for the people of the archdiocese. Do you think you'll get to that point where you'll be able to at least see, as you mentioned, see this as God calling you to something more, but that you can also see the joy in this moment?
Oh yeah, I'm sure of that, John. When I see my people happy, you know, I mean, truly happy, that already is a great joy for me. And I sometimes, and maybe you've heard me share this before, but one of the affirmations of Thomas Merton towards the end of his life has always fascinated me. He was asked by someone, if you knew then what you know now, would you do it all again? And he said, absolutely not. But having done it, I would. And it's in the rearview mirror that he saw the grace. And I've found that over and over again, you know, that just, when I reflect on my life, it always leads me to gratitude. You know, and I think that's why, strangely enough, I don't think this was just a coincidence, that my Episcopal motto and the little saying on the card, holy card for my ordination as a priest, all are from the letter to the Philippians. Now, I didn't do that on purpose, but it's a letter that makes a lot of sense to me. You know, it's an apostle and his people talking, discovering joy because they belong to Jesus, and they're in Christ Jesus. And even though one's a prisoner in chains, and the other's this fragile little community on the edge of the world, Paul uses joy more often in that letter than he uses in any other one. And I guess that's been the story of my life, is, you know, in the fragility, and yes, even in the suffering, we find joy because our faith gives us a different perspective on it. And it's this belonging in Christ that, and so this is part of my belonging, you know, and I hope it makes me a better pastor of Indianapolis.
In terms of that joy, and I know that there's been some initial discussions or about a local celebration, when that all comes to pass, how much will you be looking forward to sharing that? I mean, one of the things that was evident in your receiving the pallium, that you saw that very much as something you wanted to share with the Archdiocese. How much are you looking forward to sharing even this humble moment with the people of the Archdiocese?
Well, first it's important for me to share, you know, and I'm counting on you to somehow communicate this, that my priority remains serving Jesus Christ in the people of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. That's what's been entrusted to me. And secondly, I think it is that, you know, I want to be able to say thank you to the people for helping make me who I am. And it's who I am, I guess, that Pope Francis chose. And thirdly, the firm conviction that we can do great things together. And in doing that, it's going to take us out of ourselves. But as Francis has said from the get-go, a church that's turned in on itself gets sick. I don't think we're sick. I think we're always presented with an invitation to leave our securities, and which I think I have been invited in the last 24 hours yet again to do that. But in responding to that and kind of walking on the water with our eyes fixed on Jesus, you know, we find joy.
What I think is my last question for you, and of course journalists always say that and follow up with 4 more, but obviously one of the great influences in your life is your dad. I would imagine your thoughts have turned to him in terms of disappointment. You speak very touchingly and from the heart about your dad. How do you think he would react to this news in terms of the son that he hoped to raise and the example that he gave you as a life to follow?
Well, I think he would probably say to me, you know, don't get too full of yourself. But he wouldn't have to say that, you know, except because of my own. Because if he thought, well, he wouldn't. Because his example to me was such an opposite thing, you know. My dad did well at what he did. He was a cost analyst for General Motors, but my mom, he never shared this with me. My mom sometimes said that, you know, the real crucial promotions in his life never came. Principally because he belonged to a division of General Motors that was absorbed by a larger one, Fisher Body. And he used to say to my mom, I always feel like I have a T on my forehead, which stood for Turnstead. That was the division where he began and worked in. But he said, if this helps our kids, it's all worth it. And so in a sense, he doesn't have the sort of public recognition that I have. But he was a teacher in a way, in an intimate way, because I don't have children, that I can never be. And I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for the communion of the saints, which tells me that he does know. And he helps me, and I do pray to him for his intercession.
As always, you've been generous and gracious in your time